My name is Max, and this is an instrument I made to study plasma behaviors and also use it as a random number generator. Now, I exhibited this thing at OpenSauce 2026 and decided to make a series of videos explaining how I made this thing, the physics behind what's happening, and what this, what this thing is in general. Now, this whole instrument revolves around a vacuum tube I got on eBay. It's called the GSH2, and this tube was built in the USSR. It was built in 1979. And Soviets manufactured these tubes for predominantly radar applications. Now, what do you do with a piece of old radar equipment from the USSR? Well, I decided to make a random number generator in this instrument study plasma entropy. So, as I said, it's a broadband noise tube, meaning this tube specifically emits noise from 10 Hz up to the megahertz. Now, I didn't know much about noise in general when I was going into this project. In fact, I'm a year into self-teaching myself. Electronics and physics in general, and I go to art school, so if there are any incorrections in my description of how this tube works, then feel free to correct me in the comments below, and I'd actually appreciate it because I'm pretty early in my journey of learning about this stuff. Now, this tube specifically, it's a hot-cathode tube, and it's full of neon. So basically what's happening is the filament heats up, and it starts to emit electrons via what's called thermionic emission. Now, as these electrons are drifting around in the glass envelope, there's no force applied to them, so they're not going anywhere. As we know, electrons are negatively charged subatomic particles, which is electricity. The kinetic movement of electrons is electricity. Now, when you apply a positive voltage to this tube, right, 200 volts sustained DC actually, right, when you supply this positive voltage, all these floating electrons from heated off of the filament from thermionic emission are sucked into the positive voltage or the anode. Now, all these electrons being sucked into the anode, they cause a fluctuating current on the anode side. Now, what I'm doing is I'm decoupling this current through series capacitors into fluctuating voltage. Now, this fluctuating voltage is where the true randomness is being derived from, and the random numbers in general. These fluctuations I can basically look at on my machine. And I'm sampling it via ESP32 ADC pin, so I can sample up to 10 kilohertz of the noise spectrum. Now, one of the central themes of this project is driving randomness from plasma. Something really interesting happened when I finished this thing, right? So, the main question is, well, I have a few Faraday cages in there and some shielding for EMI, but, I mean, how do you know what is noise from shot noise and actual randomness? And how do you know what is noise just from the environment and electromagnetic interference? So what I did is I basically put a live Fourier transform on this device, so I can kind of measure the noise, whether the noise is localized or it's from the environment, and see the frequencies of what it is. Because if I have peaks in this spectrum, then I know that the numbers I would be deriving from it are going to be biased. So that's not good. I was hoping to not see any peaks, and I was hoping to just see a nice little what is called white noise, just randomness, random little waveform. Unfortunately, I didn't see that. And what I did see was a few interesting peaks. Now, at first I was dismayed with these peaks, and I'm still trying to figure out what exactly they are. So I've pulled some data sets from this tube, and the interesting thing is the first two peaks I have are probably electronics, and I know that because they don't seem to move at all. I believe them to be probably some kind of switching boost converter I have in there, which I do, you know, which sustaining the 200 volts. Now that third peak, which sits around 3 to 4 kilohertz, that's the interesting one. That peak, when I cold start the tube, that peak basically shifts downward in frequency by 16% over the course of 11 minutes. it does this constantly. So whenever I start up the tube, it does this, which I find very interesting, and I think it's a relaxation oscillation of the circuit itself. Now, I could be wrong about that, and I'm gonna run some tests and see what it is. Now, as I mentioned before briefly, this video is merely an introduction to this project, and it's going to be a series because, to be honest, this was a complete shit show to make, and it's insanely complicated, at least for my skill set as so far. Being a year into self-teaching yourself with no formal education, this thing I made, like, it was like honestly way out of my field when I made it, and I learned so much from making it. So, but anyway, so I made it in 25 days right before OpenSauce because I didn't know I was going to get in. So I essentially just had the vacuum tube and the idea, which is what I applied to OpenSauce with. So when I got in my email, to my surprise that I did get in, I had to actually make this thing. And it was a complete shit show. I made so many mistakes along the way. And the reason I'm filming this video now actually is because, well, not only to like kind of put my work out there, but also because right after I make this video, I'm gonna tear this thing apart and like keep working on it. So right now that I have a working iteration, I want to like record it now and then keep working on it. Essentially, this is the version I had at OpenSauce. So I want to basically show this one.